Senko Prepper here with another video on a controversial subject in the prepper community, gold and silver. I'm going to include other metals in there also, but basically there's two trains of thought within the community. First, uh, there are some that say that you can't eat it, you can't drink it, so you might as well just go ahead and sell it and then use that money to buy food, water, other preps that you're going to need. On the other side of the coin, there are people that consider it very essential in some forms of SHTF WRL scenarios, and others consider it very valuable in nearly all SHTF scenarios. Now, me personally, I do have some gold and silver, and I've thought about this quite a bit over the last few years. Now, I have more silver than gold, and here is kind of my reasoning about having it. Now, in certain SHTF situations, such as like a collapse of the government, collapse of the power grid, or maybe some other WROL situation, you can kind of plug in whatever you want, maybe a pandemic or something. I believe that local governments would still be around. It may not be the government you're under currently, but I do believe that a certain government would be around because people kind of gravitate towards that thing. Along with that, I think local economies would arise. People would still probably want to sell or trade goods, services for other products and other services that they would need. Uh, it's not a huge stretch of the imagination to imagine that gold and silver would be used as a medium of exchange again. Uh, you have to realize that gold and silver have been used as money and a store of wealth for thousands of years by civilizations all over the world. Now, I do realize that not all civilizations use gold and silver, but more than not, they used a commodity that had some type of intrinsic value. Also, it was not that long ago that gold and silver was used in our monetary system here in the US. Silver specifically was used in most of our pre 1964 coinage, quarters, dimes, 50-cent pieces, silver dollars, and even our paper money was just an IOU for gold and silver. Now, before 1971, when Nixon severed the dollar from gold, you could walk into a bank and exchange U.S. gold coins for cash. They called it the gold window. Now, some of you might say that's kind of ancient history. Well, I'm not ancient history. I was born in 1972. There are lots of people walking around today who remember gold and silver being used as money. And gold and silver is great for money because you can't really make it. It has intrinsic value. There are industrial applications for silver and some for gold, like jewelry, although gold is used more as a store of wealth. Now, the thought process is the money, gold and silver coins in this case, that you're using are the same value as the product you are buying or exchanging it for. It's basically the same concept as fiat money we use today. The only difference is, in most cases, the currency that we use today has no intrinsic value. Uh, if the U.S. government collapsed and you had a dollar bill or some U.S. dollars in your pocket, how much do you think they would be worth? If there's no government backing it, it's basically worth whatever it's printed on, which is a piece of paper. And I'm not sure you could do a whole heck of a lot with a piece of paper. I guess you could, start a fire with it, wallpaper your house with it if you really wanted to. So, in many HSTF scenarios, I think it's very likely that gold and silver would be medium of exchange once again. Now, the other reason I have gold and silver is it's a great hedge against inflation or perhaps a hyperinflationary event, which is another form of an SHTF scenario. Now, recently our Fed is engaged in several rounds of QE or quantitative easing, which is basically money printing. Much of that cash is held offshore and by foreign governments. Now, since they do that because the dollar is currently the world's reserve currency. Now, in my opinion, the dollar is slowly losing that status. Eventually, the countries of the world will exchange those dollars for whatever new reserve currency comes along. Perhaps the Chinese yuan or the UNSDR. Now, those dollars, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars, will come back to our shores. making hyperinflation a pretty real possibility. Now, I don't think most people understand what that would be like. If you could imagine a loaf of bread being $25 or a gallon of milk skyrocketing to $40, and I'm not talking about that happening in a few years. I'm talking about that happening overnight. I mean, could you imagine that? I know my house, we would have to give up power or internet or a lot of other things just to keep food in our stomach. It's kind of scary. Gold and silver is a hedge against that. So I'm not saying you should sell your house and buy all the silver and gold you can. What I'm saying is, if you're thinking about buying or having some gold and silver, you just want to make sure that it's right for you. Um, Now, I do realize many folks would have a hard time buying gold or even a decent amount of silver. I believe gold is around what 11.50 an ounce. Took a hit today, so still, it's a pretty good chunk of change. And for some people, it'd be kind of hard to do. But there are some things you can do that will protect your buying power and also, to an extent, hedge against a hyperinflationary scenario. Now, I do this all the time. Normally, throughout a day, I'll buy lunch or I'll go shopping or whatnot. So when I come home, I usually have some change in my pocket. Now I have two jars. One is for my modern quarters, dimes, zinc pennies, and the other is for my copper pennies, which are typically made before 1982, and nickels. Now, the metal value for a copper penny is about a cent and a half, give or take. Nickels have a metal value of about 3.5 cents. Now, nickels aren't as good of a deal right now, but I still save them. Now, when I first started saving nickels, they were about 5 cents. So the face value was about the same as the metal value. And that's what you want. Now, I get this question all the time. Now, quarters are a bigger coin. And so a lot of people say, well, what about quarters? Well, even though they're bigger, they only have about 3.5 cents worth of metal value. So in essence, what you're trading is a 25-cent value for a coin that only has a metal value of about 3.5 cents. So if you save your nickels and your copper pennies, you can keep your purchasing power and to a certain extent hedge against a hyperinflationary event. Well, I hope this gives you guys something to think about. I know it's a touchy subject to many, but I think every prepper should at least kind of evaluate if gold and silver is a prep that they want to have, or possibly if they want to go with the alternative of saving their nickels and their copper pennies. But no matter what you do, what I encourage you to do is take action and get your preps ready. Be diligent about that and just be prepared for anything that may come down the pipe. Okay? Well, thanks for watching. Share, comment, just be nice, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.